So that was really cool. I just spent 40 minutes rambling, and I didn't get to the point I wanted to talk about, and that's this: what needed to change. So through my rambling, I was able to find the three things that needed to change. That I should say, what needed to change to bring me where I am. One, what needed to change was my view about how I was raised. The second thing that needed to change was my marriage. And the third thing that needed to change was my situation in terms of my job, my living situation, where I was at geographically. Those are the three things that needed to change. And I think that everyone, to some extent, has to face those changes at some point in their life. And for me, it just happened to be when I was 23 years old, as a few major life events were occurring at the same time. So, the first change. The first change is my core beliefs. What are my core beliefs? They were very fundamentalist. My core beliefs centered around how I was raised, and I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with being raised that way, but there is when it affects your mental health, when it affects how you view the world, others around you, and even how you make friends. There's a lot that affects. And for me, it certainly affected the two other things that needed to change. So it's interconnected. So I was raised a very specific kind of way, around a very specific kind of people. And again, nothing wrong with that inherently, but it had worn away at my mental health for a long time. You always struggle with something I'm going to talk about later, which is cognitive dissonance. I struggled with my view on others and their inherent goodness or evil. It affected my view on jobs. It affected the effort I put into things because I thought it would all be taken care of for me. So I wouldn't try to push myself. I wouldn't try to do something outside of my comfort zone. I thought if it were supposed to happen, it'll go ahead and happen. There's nothing I could do that could possibly influence an outcome that's already set in stone. So that's a pretty strict way to live and very grating on the psyche. So that goes into the second part, my marriage. And of course, being raised a certain way, my views on marriage were that a divorce was out of the question. Shouldn't happen. Under any circumstances, you make that marriage work. I was in a marriage. I was married in 2017. I was a kid. Maybe, I think I was 19 years old. It's so hard to remember. Everything's just kind of a blur, but I was 19 years old. I was getting involved in a very serious relationship I had no business being in, and this is very subjective, possibly objective, but there's no way you should be getting into a marriage around 19 years old, 20 years old, unless you are just a super kid. Like you've been prepared perfectly, your finances are in order, you've got a perfect job, and you know how to communicate to the nth degree. Maybe in that instance you could be ready by 19 or 20, but I certainly wasn't. I was talking to this girl for a year, dating for 6 months maybe, and then during that marriage that started in 2017, there was a cycle and pattern of what I would label abuse, continuing on, not necessarily physical, but it was absolutely terrible. It was along with surviving cancer, it was the most difficult thing I had to endure. So let that speak for itself. Dying and this situation are possibly hand in hand. I wanted to die. I mean, geez, I was miserable. So I thought I couldn't get a divorce, even though the situation was absolutely insane. It was insane. I still didn't think that was on the table. Um, and if you have ever been in a situation like that, you know that your mind is literally splitting. It's just splitting. That's exactly what it feels like. You're literally torn between what you desperately want to happen and what you absolutely believe cannot happen. I can't explain it unless you've been there, but it feels like an immovable object impossibly being torn into. My most accurate description. So I was in this relationship for a year, realized very quickly I shouldn't be in it. I took the courage and the step forward in separation, which, you know, came with its own set of challenges. Did I do it correctly? Probably not. Did I handle it correctly with how I acted and the specifics of what I did? No. But I don't know anyone who could possibly handle that perfect. So I just took that year that I was married for a year, and then took another year to kind of figure out how I needed to change because I couldn't be in this situation any longer, and that's, you know, absolutely pushed me to be where I'm at. And the final straw that broke the camel's back was realizing I had spent 4 years on a degree I didn't want, working full time, going to school full time, for a job that I absolutely hated. I wasn't qualified for it. It was a sales position that wasn't a sales position. It was actually just a really high paying clerical job. And it was way more than I was qualified for at that. So I'm working at this, what feels a dead end spot in a place I hated to be in because the weather sucked, and that's really petty. The weather did suck. I hate total sunshine and heat 24/7, 365 days a year. And two, I don't want to be in a place where I just destroyed my life with the relationship I was in and the friendships, you know, that were ended, or just the general awkwardness of being around people who are close to the situation. And I'm 23 years old facing that. To me, that's insane. At 23 years old, I'm dealing with these issues that just absolutely needed to change. And that's exactly what happened. They did. Because I pushed them to. Because I did that for myself. And it feels really good to be able to say that. And so, while that's what needed to change, I think what I'd love to explore as well is how it needed to change. The philosophy behind how I got there and how I learned to deal with it. I think that's a very interesting thing that a lot of other people can benefit from knowing. So if you're in a situation similar to mine, or have ever been close to it, or maybe just love a good info dump, I welcome you to be a part of those videos, or, you know, those little lessons, whatever they are. And that being said, that's what needed to change. And those changes led me to this lovely lavender room, my new home state of Texas, which is 1,000,000,000% better than Florida, and what led me to my awesome job as an insurance salesperson that I actually love. And ultimately, my happiness. So there you go.